Story 1. The House on Sycamore Loop. My name is Marcus. I'm 26 years old, and at the time this happened, I was living in a one-bedroom apartment in Columbus, Ohio, splitting my rent between a part-time job at a print shop during the day and DoorDash runs at night. That was my life for about 14 months. Wake up, eat whatever was cheap, drive to the shop, come home, eat again, get in the car, and drive strangers their food until my eyes started doing that thing where highway lines blur together. I want you to understand that before any of this happened, I was someone who genuinely enjoyed the night shift. I know that sounds strange to people who've never done it, but there's something about driving through a city at 2 in the morning that strips everything down. The roads are quiet. The radio plays songs nobody requests anymore. You develop this private relationship with the city. You start to know which gas stations have clean bathrooms, which neighborhoods smell like bread from the bakeries starting their morning prep, which traffic lights take forever even when there's nobody else on the road. I'd been doing this long enough that I had a system. I kept a small cooler in the back seat for hot bags. I had a charging block zip-tied under the dash. I kept the DoorDash app, Google Maps, and Spotify in a stack I could thumb through without looking. I wore the same gray hoodie almost every night because it had a deep front pocket for pens and my phone when I was walking to a door. I was methodical. Calm. The kind of person who rated his deliveries the moment he got back to the car so he never fall behind on the feedback system. This was a Tuesday in November. I remember it was Tuesday because the print shop had been slow and I'd left early, which meant I was on the road by 9 instead of 10:30. That extra hour and a half matters more than you'd think when you're doing night deliveries, because it puts you in a different slice of the city. The dinner rush crowd versus the after-midnight crowd, they're different people. Different energy. The first few deliveries were unremarkable. A pizza place near Ohio State. A Thai spot off Morse Road. A woman at an apartment complex who answered the door in surgical scrubs and looked like she hadn't slept since the previous administration. I did 7 deliveries in the first 2 hours without anything worth mentioning. Then, around 11:15, I accepted an order from a Chinese restaurant I'd delivered for maybe a dozen times. Sycamore Loop, the drop-off address, wasn't an area I knew. My GPS took me east, away from the denser parts of the city, into a neighborhood that was somewhere between suburban and rural. The houses got further apart. The streetlights got further apart. After about 10 minutes of driving, I was on a road where my headlights were the only light source I could see in any direction. Sycamore Loop was, literally, a loop. A single road that curved around on itself like a lasso, maybe 12 houses total on the interior. A thin strip of dark woods on the exterior side. The address I was looking for was number 14. The houses were mostly dark. A few porch lights. One house had a television flickering behind thin curtains. I pulled up to number 14 and checked the order notes. It just said, "Leave at door, no knock." Standard. I parked, grabbed the bag, and walked up the driveway. The house looked occupied. There was a car in the driveway, an older Buick, dark red condensation on the windows like it had been sitting a while. The porch light was on. There was a wreath on the door, the kind people put up and fall and forget to take down. I set the bag on the doormat, took the delivery photo, and walked back to my car. I just put my seatbelt on when I noticed the order included a note I hadn't seen. Not the standard drop-off note. There was a second note field, the one customers can use to write anything. It said, "I saw you on my camera." Thank you, Marcus. I sat with that for a second. My name isn't on my DoorDash profile in any way that a customer would see. Dashers are identified by first name only on the customer's end, and even that, I'd checked once, shows as a shortened version. The app would have shown them Mark, not Marcus. I'd never delivered to this address before. I'd never used my full name in any note or interaction through the app. I told myself there was probably a simple explanation. Maybe they'd cross-referenced my plate. Maybe there was some feature of the app one wasn't aware of. Maybe the person recognized me from somewhere. I drove away. I came back to Sycamore Loop 6 nights later. I didn't go looking for it. The app routed me there. Same restaurant. Different order. And when I accepted it and saw the address, I felt something I can't fully describe, not fear exactly. More like when you're watching a movie and you recognize an actor from something else, and you can't remember what, and it bothers you more than it should. This time the note said, "Same spot as last time is fine." Which is a normal thing to write. Leave it where you left it before. People do that. Except I had no way of knowing this was the same customer from the previous order. DoorDash doesn't surface that information to the dasher. And even if I'd somehow been matched with the same customer again, there was no visible indicator of that on my end. I only made the connection because I remembered the address. The customer knew I'd been there before. They knew I'd remember. I drove out to Sycamore Loop again. The same quiet road, the same scattered porch lights, the same dark Buick in the driveway. The same wreath on the door. I set the bag down, took the photo, and walked back to my car faster than I needed to. This time I sat in the car for a moment before leaving. I don't know what I was waiting for. I looked at the house. The porch light was on, same as before. The front window had curtains, same as before. But I noticed something I hadn't the first time. There was a small mounted camera above the door frame. A white rectangular device, maybe a ring or a nest. The little indicator light on it was green. I pulled out of the loop and drove home. The next morning I checked my delivery history and pulled up the contact information. The name on the account was listed as D. Harlow. There was no review, no tip, no further communication. The third time, I didn't accept the order. It came through about 2 weeks after the second delivery. Same restaurant, same address, and this time the note field had something different. It said, "You always park in front of the mailbox. You don't have to do that. You can pull into the driveway." I stared at my phone for a long time. I declined the order and marked myself as taking a break. I sat in a Walgreens parking lot for 20 minutes. Then I called a friend who also dashed on nights, a guy named Trevor, and I told him what had happened. He laughed at first, and then stopped laughing. He said, "They've been watching you. Like multiple visits. They've been watching your parking habits." I know they have. I never took an order to Sycamore Loop again. I don't know if D. Harlow ordered from DoorDash after that or if they noticed I stopped coming. I don't know what they wanted, or whether they were harmless, or whether I was one delivery away from finding out. I still drive nights sometimes. I still take orders to quiet neighborhoods and dark driveways. But I check the second note field now before I accept anything. I look for it the way you look both ways at a clear intersection. Not because you expect anything, just because you've learned what it costs not to. I never found out who D. Harlow was. I didn't try.